And we're coming to you live here from the Go Talk Texas production studios, now looking a little bit more like Daystar, maybe TBN. We'll see if we can get a little rally contribution thing going. At the very least, like the videos, subscribe, get all these episodes and content as it comes online, and leave a comment, engage, say something nice, say something mean, just say something. Let us know that you're out there and you're listening. Even if you hate listening, keep listening. There's more to come. So here we are, second installment of Making Mighty 2. It did not take me a year to put this out. Been sitting on this here for a little bit, but it's just one of those things, you know. I'm a serial procrastinator. I am gifted in the art of waiting too long. It's just one of those things. I'm one of these artist types that just needs to have the inspiration. I need to feel led. I used to have a pastor that said, you know, you want to feel led? Well, let me put on my lead boots and I'll give you a good swift kick where the sun doesn't shine, and then maybe you'll get into gear and get moving forward. So mind you, I'm on a lot of caffeine right now. I had a clinic and seminar with jiu-jitsu where people are trying to break my legs. So yeah, I'm on Advil and a lot of hope here. But here we are, second installment of Making Mighty 2. And just as a brief review, our launching verse was 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 26 through 27. I'll go on and read it. It says, "For you see your calling, brethren, that not many wise according to the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called. But God has chosen the foolish things of the world to put to shame the wise. And God has chosen the weak things of the world to put to shame the things which are mighty." The two mighties used there were very different. One had to do with an internal strength. That's the first introduction to it. Other translations may even make it sound like it was influence, like you're not somebody of note. And the second use is more in a negative, saying that God is using the first mighty to put to shame the weak things, to put to shame the things which are mighty. And those were more physical prowess. Those had to do with having a physical strength, a fleshly strength, if you will. But you and I coming into the kingdom typically don't look very strong. Most of us are found at our weakest point. Most of us come in broken, beat up, and God is in the process of restoring and rebuilding and rebirthing us into something that He intended in the first place. As we started last time, first thing we looked at Judges chapter 6, verses 11 through 12. God meeting up with Gideon in a place where he is hiding a harvest. He's trying to bring in some food in an act of cowardice because of the Midianites coming in and ransacking Israel, not allowing them to bring in a crop. And the angel of the Lord visits him and says, "Hey there, mighty man of valor." Again, seemed like God was gaslighting, but He's not. He was calling forth the gold. He's calling forth the things that He's placed on the inside of Gideon that Gideon doesn't know and is completely unrealized, and He is calling it out. So it is not gaslighting at all. God is calling something forth that's in there that may not have surfaced yet. So that was the first one was, you know, we're mighty because He says so. Second, we looked at David at the cave of Adullam, where he and his brothers and his father's house come to him there, and everyone who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, everyone who was discontented gathered to him. So he became captain over them, and there were about 400 men with him. That's in 1 Samuel 22, verses 1 through 2. So in the raw, God brings in us from everywhere, every facet. Some of us come in limping, crawling into the kingdom, busted, broken down, disgusted. It is what it is. We've hit rock bottom, but the rock that we land upon is Christ, and He begins His rebuilding process. I remember a story about Michelangelo, sculptor, mostly did some incredible painting work as well. But, he was in the process of, I believe, chipping away a big piece of marble, and somebody comes walking by and says, what are you sculpting there? He says, well, I'm sculpting an elephant or something like that. And they were, well, how do you do that? He says, well, I chip away everything that doesn't look like an elephant. So even us in our hard exteriors, our beat up exteriors, coming into the hands of the living Savior, he begins to chip away and take away everything it is that doesn't look like him. Like we are being fashioned, we are being made formidable throughout this whole sanctification process. It doesn't happen in a day, but it can happen daily. Even in the small ways, God is at work. And isn't it like God to give us a snapshot of a motley crew being made into a mighty crew, that it is possible. Nothing is impossible in the hands of God. I was listening to a podcaster, Chris Williams, or is it Williamson? Williamson, a British guy, interesting cat, has a lot of great guests and hosts conversations of a myriad of different topics, fitness, masculinity, politics, business. He pretty much has a good sit down with just about everybody. And I think he was sitting with Cameron Haynes, and they were talking about masculinity. And he referenced something that I had trouble finding. He was talking about the Blitz during the First World War? It might have been the Second World War, where there were a lot of these like men in psychiatric wards just kind of in a catatonic state. And then as the Blitz Germans came in and started, bombing London, they didn't have anyone to drive the ambulances and fire trucks and things like that, because most of the other men were already out to war. And somehow these men that were in this catatonic state, albeit pretty useless, rose to the occasion, and they began to be the ones driving the ambulances and driving the fire trucks and being that first response team, because there was no one else there to do it. And the whole summation of that little segment of that podcast was, he says, if you give a man a purpose, he'll crawl over broken glass and do it with a smile. That most of us are looking for a reason to be. We're looking for meaning. And not unlike our King Jesus, should we come to him at our worst state, disenfranchised, forgotten, overlooked, and he brings us in and gives us meaning, gives us a place to come and to be. One of the other things that we did look at is the introduction of some of these mighty men in David's company. Not unlike these guys that came out of the cave of Adullam, that met him there. If you think there were 400 guys there, and then we go look into the second book of Samuel in 23, where David's last words are recorded, then we're introduced into the company and the men that had joined him, more than likely from that very place. And without going into that whole litany again, let's just go over a couple of the guys that we did profile on our last episode. First one was Adino the Eznite. Q, let the bodies hit the floor. Kills 800 guys in a single sitting. I don't know if they called him Dino for short, and if they didn't, it was a totally missed opportunity, and I'll be sure to call him that in heaven. There was Eleazar, the son of Dodo. We can call him Eli. So he got so heated that his hand had stuck to the sword in battle. It doesn't tell us how many people he killed, but it's certainly a better case than having Edward 40 hands going here. This guy is stuck and strapped and killed a great many of people, and it was regarded as a great victory of the Lord that day. Then there was our friend Shammah, who overlooked and cared for a field of lentils. So, ShamWow maybe. I don't know if anyone remembers that guy, ShamWow. I think he got beat up by a transvestite or something like that, like bit his tongue off in a drug-fueled. That's something for a pitch man. You kind of need your tongue. And maybe just don't consort with prostitutes, and especially ones that may be stronger than you. So that is a different company of the unmighty men. But Shammah guards a field of lentils, and it caused us to consider maybe we need to rethink what it is to be mighty. Maybe it's not about having these great exploits all the time. Maybe it's about just staying in the place that God had planted you. Maybe it's a place that isn't, albeit too sexy by some of the standards that we saw, between having this intense body count and being valiant in battle. Maybe it is a little more like doing the thing that no one else wants to do and doing it with excellence, like heaven is the one that's going to see and reward what you're doing. Maybe that matters. Maybe there's something to be said about that. So faithfulness can win the day. If you wanted to go ahead and read that, you go to 2 Samuel 23, 8 through 12, and that'll give you that little lowdown on those three gentlemen. Now, what I'm about to read brings us back to the cave of Adullam, and where I am going to go with that is I'm going to go to 2 Samuel 23, and we're going to start at verse 13. Now, this is after we had just been introduced to those three gentlemen we just discussed, and now this is a different company of mighty men. It says, "Then 3 of the 30 chief men went down at harvest time and came to David at the cave of Adullam." And a quick note, an interesting thing that God would call us back to a place that we're familiar with, where he found the most wrecked, wretched group and band of people, and then they go on to do these crazy exploits. But it says, at the cave of Adullam, and the troop of the Philistines encamped in the valley of Rephaim. Verse 14, David was in the stronghold, and the garrison of the Philistines was then in Bethlehem. And David said with longing, "Oh, that someone would give me a drink of the water from the well of Bethlehem, which is by the gate." So the 3 mighty men broke through the camp of the Philistines, drew water from the well of Bethlehem that was by the gate, and took it and brought it to David. Nevertheless, he would not drink it, but poured it out to the Lord. And he said, "Far be it from me, O Lord, that I should do this. Is this not the blood of the men who went in jeopardy of their lives?" Therefore he would not drink it. These things were done by the 3 mighty men. It sounds a little nutty, right? He just decides to say, I would, and he obviously wasn't calling for anybody to go to do this. But these guys go ahead and they put themselves at this incredible personal risk of their lives to get a drink for the king while he's parched. And they risk everything to do it. They go into an area that is occupied by their enemies and stealthily get this cup of water and bring it back. And obviously he refuses to drink it. And I say all that to say it's interesting that we're introduced to these themes. And if you notice, it's a company. All of these men are mighty, but not a one of them seem to be mighty alone. These references are offered in a collective, that there's a class of strength happening here, that they're all part of a crew. Again, even though the exploits in some cases are individual, it wouldn't be hard to surmise that these guys are being spurred on by each other. As they see each man do something incredible, it seems that it calls forth the incredible out of every man watching to find whatever it is that God has placed on the inside of them, inspires them, and they are willing to go forth and risk something. Now, these guys did this in a band of 3. It makes me think, not only for myself, but hopefully you would ask the question of yourself, do I keep this kind of company? Do I keep myself surrounded with people that are bringing out something great from the Lord out of me? And, there's an old saying, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. It's kind of hard. In Amos 3:3, it says, "How can 2 walk together lest they be agreed?" Some of us really don't have a problem with getting where it is we're trying to go because we're linked up with people that are going in the same direction, that are seeking after the same things. It's really easy to get sidetracked and detoured because we're not moving forward with the right people. Now, that doesn't mean that we're all going to be moving at the same pace, but at least if we can all be going in the same direction, perhaps we will arrive at the place that the Lord is leading us to. There's another story about David in 2 Samuel verses 21 through 18, and that is that giant killers beget giant killers. It goes on to read in verse 18 of chapter 21, it says, "When the Philistines were at war with Israel, David and his servants with him went down and fought against the Philistines, and David grew faint. Then Ishbi-Benob," if I got it wrong, brother, come after me, "who was one of the sons of the giant, the weight of whose bronze spear was 300 shekels, who was bearing a new sword, thought he could kill David. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, came to his aid and struck the Philistine and killed him. Then the men of David swore to him, saying, 'You shall not go out no more with us to battle, lest you quench the lamp of Israel.' Now it happened afterward that there was again a battle with the Philistines at Gob. Then Sibbecai the Hushathite," that's not right, but whatever. I chopped it up just like our man did here. "Killed Saph, who was one of the sons of the giant. Again, there was a war at Gob with the Philistines, when Ethanan, the son of Jair-Oregim," yeah, that's fine, "the Bethlehemite, killed the brother of Goliath the Gittite, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. Yet again there was war at Gath, and there was a man of great stature, who had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in number. And he was also born to the giant. So there, when he defied Israel, Jonathan, the son of Shimei, David's brother, killed him. These 4 were born to the giant in Gath and fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants." So not only do the giants and things that you face have family, hopefully they meet you, but you have friends. Hopefully you have friends that are willing to put down the same enemies and can put down the same enemies as you and after you. This guy with the six fingers on each hand and toes too. Yeah, hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You've killed my father, prepare to die. Yeah, so there you go. Princess Bride, that's where you get it from. So we know that if we're going to be mighty, number one, God has to have called it forth. God has to have said it. Okay. Secondly, you got to be weak. You got to be raw. You got to be real. God begins to chip away everything that doesn't look like his son in us in order for us to be strong and able to meet the hard times and moments that we're going through. And, I was watching this piece on Vice the other day. Vice news, not exactly known for its objectivity in its reporting or its or journalistic integrity. They actually did a really good piece on Dagestan in Russia. It's basically like a state in the United States out of Russia. And this place, they've taken note and did some reporting on the idea that this place is known as like a fight factory. That out of this area, this specific geographic location, has come some of the greatest grapplers and wrestlers that we've ever seen in the world. Right now, we have a UFC in the lightweight division who's virtually unbeatable. Dagestani guy's got incredible wrestling, actually has some pretty decent hands and feet, and, it all but seems to be invincible at this point. But you have, something like 30 gold medalists, Olympic gold medalists coming out of this place. So Vice took it upon themselves as an interest point to say, well, what's happening here? What's in the water? We want to go see what's going on. And these guys are in incredibly harsh conditions. They're living in a mountainscape, essentially like a stronghold, and there's not a whole lot there. And one of the things that keeps these young guys out of basically going into Islamic terrorism, which that town is vehemently against, is having the ability for them to wrestle. Totally wild. And I was watching one of these three guys, these three kids. They're probably about 11, 12 years old, getting interviewed by the Vice guy. And he says, well, which one of you is the best wrestler? And all three of them, without hesitation, said, I am. Not a one of them was willing to give credit to his teammate in the sense that, well, maybe you're better than me, but every single one of them had the confidence in themselves to say that, no, I'm the best. And they were all different weight classes. It was very funny to watch that happen. But that kind of stuff doesn't totally happen in a vacuum. They're products of who they surround themselves with. So hopefully you and I are thinking about that. Now, God can pull us out of some incredible places, but where he takes us and who we're with also matter. Another thing to consider is that this is completely supernatural. It's not going to be achieved in the gym with your reps and your PRs, or you're beating it for time. None of that matters here. It's completely different. In Ephesians 6, verse 10, it says, finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might, not yours or mine. So how does that even happen? In 2 Corinthians 10:3, 10:3 and through to verse 5, it says, for though we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for pulling down strongholds, casting down arguments, and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. Again, the world may prescribe a different means of strength and resistance than our kingdom does. Our King rules over every authority that has been, will be, and will be to come. Every knee will bow, every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord. So for you and I to face the tough times and moments that we do, we meet them and greet them in a very, very different fashion. So it's not the reps, it's going to be the rest. In Isaiah 40, verses 29 through 31, it goes on to read, it says, he gives power to the weak, and those who have no might, he increases strength. Even the youths shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall, but those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. So with that to say, beware of an old man in a young man's game. What an interesting contrast that Isaiah makes there, in the sense that he's contrasting the vigor and strength of youth versus those that perhaps have been a little more seasoned, and that we have to wait upon the Lord. For everything that God's not telling you to wait, get up, go and get. But when God says to wait on certain things, it's worth waiting. In Luke, he told the disciples that to tarry in the city of Jerusalem and wait for the Holy Spirit. So some things you and I have to wait for. We don't get to get out and get going and be go-getters. Some of us need to receive the supernatural strength and endowment that he has to give us in order for us to do the thing that he's called us to do. And with that, I would say, go ahead and go get you some mighty. In Jesus' name.